Ooh, look at me actually making a video on the side channel. Yeah, well, I might actually make this a series, or I might actually start putting more videos on this channel. I was just kind of thinking, like, man, I got a lot of stuff to complain about. Where else would I complain about it? Also, a lot of people I've seen also have like side channels now, so I wonder if that's like a new thing more people are doing is like specifically making side channels. And I've had this channel forever and not really done anything with it. And I did say that over the summer I would maybe start putting more content on it. So I guess that's kind of what this is. We could consider it a pilot, I guess. Just I don't know. There could be some other stuff too. I've have some other ideas for more merchandise based things other than just like complaints and rants and stuff. But this video, we can call it a pilot or whatever. I was just kind of thinking about some stuff that I'm like, huh, that would make for a good like video. So I basically just put the camera on and I'm gonna kind of rant, I guess, for a bit. Um, about some things that, man, I was just thinking about and I'm like, I miss the old days. Maybe that's what the series will be. It's called I Miss the Old Days. Because I was thinking a while ago, I did a video on like Pokemon cards and like why I miss the old Pokemon cards. And of course, that video nowadays would be much different. If I can find that, I think I deleted it, but if I can find it, I'll put it on this channel. But I was thinking about collectibles specifically recently, and the inspiration for this was kind of the I did a video on the main channel about a lost Metroid figure. The long story short with that is that there was a pre-order page put onto a website called NCSX that showed a Metroid Fusion little like minifigure that never came out. And I never saved that picture. The website claims that they remember it, but they don't have the listing, and I can't find it anywhere. And I started to like really bother me. I'm like, why can't I find this? Like I almost feel like I'm going crazy. Like no one else remembers this. I'm except I guess the website, but like there's no other trace of this online. It's just so strange. So I started like looking more into it, like after the video even went out, because I'm like, maybe I missed something. And I was talking to some other people about it, and I'm like, oh, that's a good lead. And I'm going on the way back machine, doing all this crazy stuff, and I'm thinking like, why do I even care so much about this specific item? I haven't looked that hard for like plenty of other things that were unreleased or canceled that you know, I want to say like would like more or am more interested in. The Metroid figure I know never came out, so we'd just be finding a picture, and it's not even an actual figure. It was just a mock-up. So why do I care so much about this like not even real thing? And the conclusion I came to was actually that I don't think it's necessarily that I care about the item itself, but I care about like the history of it and the era of which it released. Because as I started looking more into that stuff, it was sort of like one of those like mid to late 2000s mysteries from the earlier days of collecting that not many people would have even come across or known about. And it got me like a little nostalgic for that. I kind of think that's where it stems from, is not the item itself, but just being nostalgic for the old days of collecting. And this feels like an old mystery, kind of like the O'Hare plush in a way, but maybe a little older than that, you could say. But nothing as recent as like, like the that Jin statue that I talked about, or like the Minted Lab stuff. This would be like old stuff. And then that made me think, why do I care or miss the old era of collecting? Because collecting nowadays is so much bigger and, you could say, better than it was before. Like, why do I miss the old days? And you could say a lot of it is nostalgia, and I think a lot of it is probably my own bias and nostalgia towards being in those early communities. But I do miss that. And I think, just like with most things like Pokemon cards and everything, and even retro game collecting, we have strayed further and further from like the good path, and we're on like the bad path. And as this stuff gets more popular, just more people get into it. And I made a list of all the different things that kind of, I guess, relate to the point of this video, like, why does collecting suck nowadays? For me anyway. Or, of course, I say that with all this stuff behind me. I still collect and I still like collecting. But even what I collect is a lot different than what it was, 20 years ago. And to some degree, it's not as fun. Of course, getting certain items is still fun, but collectively speaking, it's a different feeling than it used to be. And why is that? I made a list right here, and I'll go through that list. So you can listen to me complain, or you don't have to. But yeah, so in thinking about all this, the first kind of connection I could think of as to why is collecting not as much fun nowadays? Why do I care about all these old mysteries and stuff, and like, just diving into the old era with like import shops and stuff? Like, we've come so far from that. Now I can import myself. Now other places are getting Japanese, like, or localizing things so you don't even have to get from Japan anymore. Like, why does that even matter? Well, I think one of the reasons why it matters, according to my list that I came up with, is the knowing the product ranges nowadays and like how far merchandise ranges go. And what I mean by that is, think about this in terms of video games. Back in the day, you didn't really have as many strategy guides. You didn't have like online resources or walkthroughs. The game was basically limited to your imagination. And I think that kind of applies to collecting as well. Back in like the mid to late 2000s, there wasn't a lot of great documentation for like the wide variety of stuff that was released, and not even in the US, but like in Japan too, because that stuff just didn't really make its way online back then. So me being like a new collector at the time, I would say I started collecting in like 2007 or 8. I would say like officially, probably like 2008, I think. Like I didn't know what they made, like what existed. And a lot of that just came down to, and I've said this before in videos, going through old websites, like literally the old import shops, scrolling through all their plushes, all their figures, all their Nintendo stuff, all their Sonic stuff, and just seeing what was there, and sometimes not even knowing what set something came from. You just saw a picture. What's that weird Sonic plush? I don't know what that's from. I can't find anything else about it online, but it looks cool. And then you kind of go further into the rabbit hole. You find like even rarer stuff that some websites still had back then. Like I found old listings for Ocarina of Time plushes from like the early 2000s and stuff. Like the Mario Party 5 plushes and stuff, of course. And like, yeah, it was just a lot more like you didn't know what was out there, so there was more of a draw to like discovering that stuff. And nowadays, well, we basically know, we have huge amounts of knowledge and also like Wayback Machine resources and stuff that really just can tell us exactly like what was out there. And with the internet being bigger now, it's more documented. There are better photos, which again is not a bad thing, but I think that's part of the reason what I miss is like it was that discovery period, not knowing what was really there. So I think with mysteries like the Metroid figure, it brings me back to that time. Like, well, what company was this? Where else was this posted? Why did it just show up and then vanish? So I definitely think to that extent, I kind of feel like we have lost quite a bit of mystery in relation to like the product ranges that exist and like coming across new things. And even you could even take that further with like known plush companies and stuff like all the old plush mysteries I used to make on Kelly Toy and like Jazzwares and stuff. A lot of those have even concluded just from like the lost media standpoint, I guess. We don't really see a lot of like lost plush mysteries from Kelly Toy anymore. A lot of them have been solved, and a lot of like Toy Fair mysteries, like, oh, that was only seen at Toy Fair and never again. Like, well, a lot of those have even shown up nowadays on eBay, like the Jazzwares Classic Supersonic that was only seen in like one Toy Fair picture and one promo poster, and the modern Knuckles from Jazzwares as well. Like, all those have been found now. Like, so it's not really as interesting as it used to be back then, where like, never mind even hoping that prototypes would show up, just the fact that you didn't even know what was released. So I think that's kind of a large part of it. But second to that, sort of in relation to it, is product fatigue, which I think is possibly more abundant nowadays than maybe it ever was before. And you could take this as a good thing or a bad thing, and there are goods and bads with it. Now, the good part about that is, and what I should say is, we are getting so much more product variety and range and character choices than we ever were. And I think that's a good thing for the most part. So many characters that I never thought would get figures are finally getting figures, like main release figures and stuff. And that's really great that we can expand our collections with, a lot more variety. And I've never really talked about Naruto figures in like a video, but I collect a lot of Naruto figures nowadays. And like, it's crazy that we're getting so much character variety that we just didn't have before. And like, that's really, really cool because I like adding new characters to like these ranges. But I guess at the same time, maybe not so much counting just the fact that, oh, we're getting like a new figure of this character. It's all coming out too quickly, and I'm finding myself unable to keep up with it. And that simply wasn't the case before, because before, companies weren't making like products as quickly as they are nowadays. The product lines were often smaller, like Japanese figures, like the Figure Arts and Figmas weren't as popular as they are nowadays, so character choices were like limited, and I feel like it was a lot easier just to keep up with what was coming out. But nowadays, I just think it's too much. And not even specifically like too many Mario figures or too many Naruto figures, which I think is a problem itself, but I just mean in general, like, there's too many product ranges, and specifically I can speak about this from a Naruto perspective. I started collecting Naruto figures not even that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. And back a couple of years ago, yeah, there wasn't like that much of a variety. I mean, you had like the Figure Arts, you had like the old Gashapon figures, you had like some of the Mega House statues and stuff, and then like the Mattel figures. But you didn't have like as much stuff as there are now. Specifically like all the prize figures and all the US figure waves like Anime Heroes and the Ultimate Legends. There wasn't as much stuff, and I feel like now that so many companies are releasing, and that's just Naruto, I mean that doesn't even count like Mario and everything else. Now that so many figure companies are doing this, I can't keep up, and I have to basically pick and choose what lines I want to collect, and I feel like as a collector that's a little frustrating, because when a lot of these figure lines came out, or when they were announced, I was like, oh, okay, like, the Figure Arts from Naruto, they did like or not even re-releases, like updates of the original Naruto Figure Arts, the Shippuden ones. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. They're old, they're a little hard to find now. Let's update these, with better articulation and stuff. And then they added some new characters that didn't get characters before, like, Sakura got a totally new Figure Arts. They added some more villains and stuff, and like, okay, that's great. And then, like, Anime Heroes came around. And, like, okay, Anime Heroes is sort of like a budget version of the Figure Arts. But the characters are sort of, a lot of them are, like, the same. But there were some different ones at the time. I think there are still a couple exclusives that don't have Figure Arts. But, like, okay, that was one thing. And then they came out with the Ultimate Legends figures, which were, like, an even smaller, more budget version of the Anime Heroes, which were budget of the Figure Arts, and I started collecting those, and and now they're adding more Figure Arts, like even more characters, and they're coming out quicker. And then there was like the Bleach Figure Arts, which came out of nowhere, and then there were the Bleach Anime Heroes, and then there were like the Naruto prize figures, and they made Naruto prize figures. I swear, a new set of like 5 were coming out like every couple of months, and then there were Bleach prize figures, and like it got to a point where like I can't keep up with this. Not only could I not keep up with the releases, like there's just too much stuff to get, but also it was adding up too quickly. I couldn't keep up and buy every product line. Also, it's like, it just wasn't as much fun because it didn't feel like I was buying the figures because I wanted them. It felt like I was buying the figures out of obligation because I had to collect them because, well, that's the newest set. I have to get them all. So I kind of just like burnt out of a lot of that stuff, and I've been much more selective of trying to like decide, well, what series do I want? Which series do I maybe don't want to collect everything for? And then stuff like Figure Arts, you kind of say, okay, I'm going to like drop the Figure Arts because I don't really care as much for what they're picking for the character choices. But then like for example, this is a really good example. I had always wanted a Jiraiya Figure Arts. I remember seeing one in ThinkGeek, if anyone remembers that store from like the mid-2010s. It was like a GameStop spinoff, but I think they existed before that. But I was in a real ThinkGeek, and they had a Jiraiya figure. This was like back in 2015, and I thought it was so cool. I'd never like seen a figure like that before. I didn't buy it. And all these years later, I said, I really want a Jiraiya Figure Arts. So I finally ended, and they've re-released him a couple times. They're coming out with a new one, I think, actually, relatively soon. That's even better than the old one. But I wanted the old one that I saw. I finally got it. And I said, okay, like, that's cool. I don't need any more Figure Arts. I have the ones that I have, plus Jiraiya, and like, I think I have a Boruto as well that I got from ThinkGeek. Okay, like, that's a nice selection. And then, they announced an Orochimaru, and I said, oh, we really don't have a lot of, like, villain Figure Arts. So I said, and also, there was no Orochimaru Anime Heroes figure at that point. Now there is, but there wasn't when that one came out. And I said, opposable Orochimaru Figure Arts, like, the only other large figure of him we've had before that was posable were, like, the Mattel ones, and those aren't great, and they're a little hard to find. So I said, okay, I'll get the Orochimaru figures, but then that's it. And then they announced a Tsunade to go with, like, the other Sannin, and now I'm like, Now I feel like I have to get the Tsunade because I need all three of them. And like, you see what's happening here? I feel like they're kind of gearing up to do that same thing for the Akatsuki as well. They did like a new Itachi. They have Pain, and I really like Pain, so I'm going to get him at some point. But like, okay, after Pain, who's to say they're not going to release more of them? And then am I going to get to the point where like, okay, well now I need every Akatsuki? And it's like, it's just too much. So yeah, fatigue is really something that we didn't see back then that is just more relevant now. And it makes it less fun because it's too expensive. There's too many different lines. And again, back in those old days, it was easier to keep up with the news of what was coming out. And it was also more exciting because you didn't see stuff like that as often. It was, like, oh my God, they're making a new figure of like, I remember when like the first, I think they're Figmas. The Twilight Princess Link and Zelda Figmas came out. Like, oh my, that was crazy. We had never seen Zelda figures like that before. And now it's like, every other day they're coming out with it. Well, maybe not every. Okay, Zelda still could use some more figure representation, I guess, generally speaking. But like, now we have the Jax figures. Now we have more Nendoroids. Now we have even more of the figure arts or whatever. We have the Ra figures. So it's like, it's almost not as exciting anymore because there's so many different choices now. So the next kind of thing that I thought about is sort of gets into a not so much even like a, I don't want to say like personal or like, opinion type, like, oh well, product fatigue could be an opinion, or knowing the item range could be an opinion, but now is like the sort of more like the controversial type stuff, which is obviously the competition from resellers and market value and stuff like that, and that's been a thing for a long time. I feel like as far back as 2015 2016 is when I can remember, like markets starting to go crazy with Mario Party 5 plushes. I think that was the earliest I can really remember. But nowadays, I mean, everyone uses eBay as like a side, just a side kind of job. Like I sold a figure on eBay, and I almost never sell on eBay. I sold a figure on eBay like not even that long ago, and like a month later, it was my same exact thing because I looked at my history, and the seller that I sold it to was the same person selling that same figure. And like they were trying to flip it for more than I sold it for. And I just feel like it's not as much fun nowadays because we see a lot of that. A lot of collecting is about competition. It's about how can we flip and make the most money? How can we drive the prices up as high as possible? And I think back in the day, we didn't see that. And I was going to say maybe I can't say that for certain, but no, I can. Because I remember I have this vivid memory of like going on eBay in like 2009 and searching for Sonic figure. And the only Sonic figures, you'd maybe find 60 or 70 at any given time. And they were all like, I don't want to say broken, but like loose, maybe broken, like Resellers figures or Toy Island figures, like stuff that people didn't want. Like they were selling things because they didn't want them. It wasn't like, oh, I just bought this whole lot of Resellers figures mint for $100. What a steal. Well, now I'm going to flip them for $300 each. Like we didn't see that type of thing. And I think in general, just the sort of climate of that is sort of like unappealing, and it sort of distances me from wanting to even look on eBay or be a collector and stuff, because I just feel like there's so much negativity surrounding it. Not to get off, I know Pokemon cards, like I said, are like their own thing, but not even to get off on a Pokemon card rant, but like I can't even go and look in the card sections anymore, like in Target or whatever, because I feel like I'm being judged. Like it's just, Pokemon cards have such a negative association. I can't even go to the store and look at the cards, like, or if they have any, which they never do. But I can't even do that comfortably because I feel like I'm being judged. This is like a social, a society label nowadays. You're a Pokemon card reseller. Like, I don't like that. And once again, we didn't see that back then. And moving away from cards, I remember specifically on like, and if you, quite a bit of this sort of like nostalgia comes from the old video game memorabilia museum forums and the website itself as well. But the forums specifically, I remember sort of being a better example of like a community. Well, it was a community, but like rather than just going to the website and like looking at stuff, the forums themselves, I remember, and if you can go in the Wayback Machine and look at some of this stuff now. The forums are gone and they weren't really saved very well, but you can find some stuff. I mean, there was a whole buy, sell, trade forum just on the video game memorabilia museum itself. And if you go back and look through those things, it was really like collectors helping collectors. And it was so nice to see and read through those things, like people alerting, like, oh, you're a Star Fox collector? Well, this thing showed up on eBay, I'm letting you know. And there wasn't any like animosity or like bad competition. It was like good stuff. It felt like it was like building up a healthy community. And of course it was easier to do back then when everything was smaller and, no one cared about that stuff. The value of this stuff was so small compared to what it is now. But I miss that. And I never really like traded with people or anything, but just like going back and looking through those things. I mean, I was using the site and I came across that stuff before it went under. So like, I miss that. I miss that sort of like tight knit community feel. That like, oh, I'm going to help you out if you help me out and stuff. And that kind of also goes along the lines of what I said earlier about like the knowledge of product ranges. There were a lot of listings and a lot of things people would pull up and they'd be like, what is this? And people would know. And it was a little mystery that they kind of had to try to figure out on the forums. And I love that. Like that seems like such a cool, era in time where, a group of people found something, they didn't know what it was, they tried to figure it out, and then like the collector of whatever that was, oh, I'll buy this and get some better photos for you guys. It's just such a healthy way to like form a community and kind of do that type of thing. And I was sort of like an observer of that, but that's something else too. It's just the competition now is not like that. And this even gets into a more negative like area of the community, or what's become of the community, which I don't really want to talk too much about, but it's because I'm not really even that involved in it nowadays, but I know in like late 2010s, it was really bad like this, mid to late 2010s. Not even just competition with like resellers, but competition in terms of like, individual collectors and what they had in their collections. Like, it got really toxic, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Collecting was not about, look at this cool thing I have, like look at this Popco Mario. It's common, but I finally got one. Yay, good job. Like, are you gonna get the other figures? No, it was like, look at this $50,000 thing that I bought because, I happened to find it, and I've been wanting it for 3 minutes. Praise me, everyone. And there were like a lot of that kind of thing in the community during that era, and it really turned me away. Like, I was already kind of turning away from it, and like that in its entirety kind of completely turned me away from it. But a lot of it was like showing off and bragging. It wasn't really like buying to enjoy or buying because you want to. It was buying because, well, that's the rarest thing, and people are going to respect me if I have the rarest thing. And I never really understood that and never liked it. And so much of the community became like that. And the funny thing is too, I don't really keep tabs on this type of thing like I used to, but I remember back during that era, and I'm sure it still happens nowadays too, and I'm just not aware of it. People would no sooner buy all this stuff, like all this expensive rare stuff, and then they'd like unload it like a year or two later. Because that's what happens when you buy quick, when you buy into a hobby before you really like take the time to figure out, do I want to be collecting this? Do I like collecting this? Is like these people drop loads of money on this stuff. They realize, why did I do that? And then they get out of it right away. I know we saw that quite a bit with like BD&A plushes. There was like a little era where like BD&A plushes were like the hottest thing. And I remember talking to someone who to this day still collects BD&A plushes and all the variations. Like, they are a hardcore BD&A collector. And they like had sold some doubles or sold some stuff they didn't need to someone else that was collecting BD&A stuff. And like maybe I don't remember what the time frame was, but it was definitely like no more than a year later, all that stuff they sold was on eBay for like triple the price that buyer got it from my collector friend. And it's like, that's so like stupid. Like, it clearly shows that you didn't value the items in the first place, or if you did, it was a fake value and you realized, okay, I've squeezed as much publicity as I can out of this. Now I'm going to sell them off. Like, I just don't understand. Again, I don't know if that really exists to that level anymore. Like, people buying things and then just straight up flipping them right away. But I know that it happened, and that was sort of like part of the downfall, I think, to me. And like I said, going back to the original VGMM point, the Video Game Memorabilia Museum, like, that didn't happen from like the late 2000s to like early 2010s. Like, the era when, again, this nostalgic era to me, like, that just didn't happen. And then eventually it did happen on the VGMM forums though, like towards the mid 2010s. Like I said, when things started to go bad, I remember there was a story about from someone who had Mario RPG plushes and they sold them to someone who flipped them and they didn't know they were going to flip them and they were real angry about that. But yeah, like in that earlier era, like I said, we didn't see that type of thing, and yeah, I miss when collecting wasn't like a competition like that. And I guess kind of a fourth point, in relation to kind of the competition is just prices in general. Like, I know that prices sort of naturally go up over time as things get more popular, and obviously as Mario and Pokemon get more popular, like, of course, the prices on that stuff aren't going to go down, but it kind of goes back to the whole, like, in a way, to the whole reseller type stuff where it's like, well, prices back in the day, it was more fun to collect because it didn't break the bank. You could kind of buy more stuff or keep your eye on more stuff. Holy grails were actually holy grails and not just like, oh, that's the holy grail of this week. You actually had to kind of like, I don't know, like save your money for a while to be able to buy those rare things. But that even kind of goes off in a different direction with it too, is now that we're older than we were, you know, 20 years ago, we have more money to spend on stuff. Like, we just didn't I mean, no one really had a lot of money to buy stuff with it as a kid. And I remember when I was just starting out collecting and I didn't have like money to really spend on anything, it was, I want to say, almost more rewarding when you found that one treasure or that one thing that like, maybe it wasn't like the rarest thing that you wanted, but oh, you found it for a really good price. Oh, I'm always gonna, like, back here, for you can't really see it, I have a Takara King DDD plush, which I think I got it probably about 10 years ago. And at the time it was like quite rare and quite valuable, but I didn't have a lot of money to spend. So I remember specifically, I think it was right after I had gone to a local convention to sell some art, and I didn't make a lot of money. But with the money, I think it was maybe $50 that I made. And I said to my brother, because we were both watching it, I said, I have $50 to spend on this. Let's drop the 50 and we'll hope for the best. And I can't believe it. I won that Takara King DDD plush for $50 10 years ago on Yahoo Japan. And like, I'm always going to remember that. Like, I'm always going to remember that $50 King DDD that that was all the money I had. I dropped it and I won it. And like, that's always going to mean more to me than, you know, the $500, or I only have one, but like, than the $500 one that I found, you know, last year that I bought because I just really wanted it, you know. And that's not to say that I haven't, like, you know, caved on some things I really, really wanted. Well, not $500, but I'm trying to think of some other rare plushes. Like the Sonic the Fighters SPO. I have been wanting a Sonic the Fighters SPO plush for maybe 15 years or more, probably ever since I started collecting. And the prices on the Fighters plushes have only gone up. And I did end up finding one that I thought was reasonable, that I did end up buying kind of just... Or no, that may have been a different one I'm thinking of. No, there was one on a Japanese flea market that was kind of high, but I thought about buying it. I don't think that was the one No. See, I'm even doing it now. It's like the memory of this is not even as distinct as me because I waited long enough. I found one that I thought was a good enough price that I just happened to find when it was up, and I said, okay, I'm finally going to buy that. And granted, I'm really happy I have it, and it's one of my favorite plushes of all time, and it completes that arc for me, but in some way, it's different because there it is, and the price was good enough where I said, okay, I'm not going to wait any longer to buy this, compared to the DDD that I threw as much money as I had and I ended up winning it and it was a memorable story. So even that, just those two comparisons, and we don't really see that type of thing anymore, just the memorable story, because you don't even really find stuff like that for that cheap anymore. I mean, people know what they have nowadays. They want to get as much money that they can for. I mean, even on Yahoo Japan and stuff, you don't really see, I never see people like, I say like dumb people with stuff that they don't know what it is. Even the most obscure plushes I can think of, like the Seaman plushes that I'm trying to collect, even the Seaman plushes, people will always say when they list those, rare, you know, old Sega Seaman plush. No one calls them, you know, video game fish toy anymore. everyone knows what they are now. So even something like that, they know that there are people that, collect Sega stuff. They're going to list those for a high price. And that's just the way that it is. And we didn't really see any of those price games or those, I'm just going to buy that type things, or at least to me, I didn't really have as much of the, I'm just going to buy that type thing back then. But the prices in general, we didn't see like we do nowadays. And then finally, I think to round out this video, the final kind of point that I have to all this, it's sort of like I was saying about like the Metroid figure at the beginning and like going back to the old community and looking through, old import shops. Nowadays, there is no centralized place for that. There is no, come here for your nostalgia fix. There is nothing like that. Because, and I've said this plenty of times before, from the actual item perspective, there is no like import shop era anymore. Import shops are gone. Now it's, let's go on eBay or be our own proxy. And I do like going on Yahoo Japan, and I don't mind buying things from Yahoo Japan. I don't like eBay. But, Yahoo Japan is fine. But just, that's sort of a whole different feeling than going to WYSIWYG or NCSX or Atamai or Toys and Joys before they started getting bootlegs. Anything like that. It's just so much different than anything like that. Kind of seeking stuff out and buying stuff yourself. And that comes with a whole different set of positive things. Like, I've found some really crazy stuff just by typing in weird things, or like, oh, I was up at 3 a.m. and this was just listed. And, that's not a completely negative thing, but import shops in themselves and sort of Americans trying to get Japanese stuff was almost like its own community. I remember on the old UFOcatcher.net, an old, I think they're a Washington-based like UFO plush importer from the early 2000s. They had like a whole community, like a forums about UFO plush collecting. Which is like crazy. You could post customs there. That was the first place where I saw a master like counterfeit plush list, which was crazy for the time. Like all this stuff that it was just sort of in a centralized place. And nowadays we don't really have that type of thing anymore. And that extends out even further to like the Video Game Memorabilia Museum. We don't even have, like, as far as I know, a real, central community for video game merchandise collecting. I don't think there really is one. Video Game Memorabilia Museum was really the big one, and they're gone. They exist as a Facebook group. I don't know how active it is, but I haven't heard, like, particularly good things about that. And even if it was the best thing of all time, it's a Facebook group. It's not like its own, it would be like if the Lost Media Wiki became a Facebook group. It's not the same thing as being its own centralized community. And they were the Video Game Memorabilia Museum was the biggest, and it's gone now. And there's no other replacement. I've seen some like collectible wikis kind of pop up that attempt to fill that hole, but like, even the Video Game Memorabilia Museum as a resource is gone, because there was a gallery, and you could argue, well, nowadays it would be impossible to keep up with, but retrospectively, you could say this would have been a good resource to have. There was a gallery section that showed all kinds of old Mario plushes and figures. At the time, Nightram was the only one contributing to it, but then he eventually opened, I think he revamped the site and made it so that anyone could add entries, which of course led to some, okay, we need to moderate this, the picture's awful, or like this is not categorized in the right place. But I mean, even in the Lost Media Wiki forums, we have that nowadays where people post stuff in the wrong category. So like, that's not really a make or break type thing. So even just to that extent, we don't have a place to talk about that anymore. And I feel like nowadays, at least from my perspective, it's sort of passing. I'll talk about video game merchandise in some videos, and I'm in some Discord servers where people talk about collectibles and stuff, there's still canceled products that we see that never come out, but it's not really like there's a main place for that. It just sort of is like here and there. And that's something else I sort of miss just in thinking about all this, and the Samus figure and all that stuff is like, yeah, where would I go to ask about this Samus figure nowadays? Well, nowhere, because no one would know. But where would I have gone back in the day? Oh, I would have gone to a Video Game Memorabilia Museum, because someone there, even if they didn't know what it was, they, maybe would have been able to like provide some more insight. Even just at a base level, like modern day, I can't even go ask any of those people if they had seen it or know about it before, because they're all gone. I don't know where a lot of the forums people went. So the best I can do is just make a video about it, and maybe someone that knows will come across it. But like, I can't go and ask those forum people anymore because the forums don't exist, and I don't know where any of those people went. So yeah, just some like, I guess just a whole bunch of different like food for thought and things to think about, just in terms of collecting as a whole, and just where it's headed and where it's been, and just how I miss it, how it kind of is not quite the same as it used to be, and I kind of miss that. And of course, like I said, you could find a lot of like negatives even with the positives. Like when I said, well, back in the day, like it was more memorable when you found something rare and cool or whatever. Yeah, and I also remember a lot of that stuff too. The first time I came across like a lot of the Sonic the Fighters plushes and like the Majora's Mask figures especially. Oh yeah, those were like hundreds of dollars back 20 years ago, right? Like, of course, like a lot of us couldn't buy that stuff back then, or we didn't have money for it, or we just couldn't find it. So like, yeah, it's not like, oh, all this really rare, cheap stuff just showed up, and like, it did have its own problems, but I feel like comparatively to nowadays, the problems are more than they are back then. And we have less resources and less culture, I guess, surrounding it. Maybe is the ending thesis to this video, is like there is not as much culture that surrounds this stuff as there used to be, and by association, it makes collecting feel worse than even the negatives did feel back, 15 years ago. So that's just what I think. What do you guys think? How long have you been collecting for? Or do you even collect at all, or have you gotten out of collecting, or what do you collect? Do you not even collect like video game toys and stuff? So kind of interesting to hear what you guys have to say, and I guess if you have any suggestions for what I can rant about next, let me know. I do have some other ideas for things that suck or whatever the series will be called. But yeah, if you have any other comments, feel free to do that. And hopefully I'll get some more videos on this channel. So with that said, I'm El Supersonic Q. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.